Hello, everyone. Hi, I am Sherry Reichert Belul, and I am the author of The Love List of a Lifetime. It's my new end of life planner. And in the process of researching and promoting this book, I met Niki DiGaetano. Hi, Niki.
Hey Sherry, good to see you.
Good to see you. Niki is a death doula. And I know there's a lot of people out there who know what that means. And there's a lot of people who also don't know what a death doula is. So maybe, Niki, why don't you start, if you want, by just sort of telling us, in a sentence or two, what does that mean?
Yeah, a death doula is like a holistic guide or helper person at the end of life, kind of thinking about birth doulas, how they provide that emotional support, that practical support, the logistics and planning and such. And then similar to birth doulas, death doulas are also not medical. So we don't prescribe, diagnose, administer medications, anything like that. But short of that, we can do quite a lot
I
at the end of life.
I know. And Nikki and I met, and we had such a great conversation about a week or two ago. And there were just like all these different topics that we were looking at that we could potentially talk about today. And you're right. Like there's so many things you do, and hopefully we'll have more conversations in the future. But for today, one of the things that really struck me, you were talking about in our conversation, the real importance of storytelling when someone is in grief. So maybe we'll just start there.
Yeah, I think humans are just inherently storytelling creatures. That's been a thing from back in the ye old caveman days. I mean, like our histories, our traditions was literally passed down orally through story, through the
Yeah.
generations. And so that's still kind of like hardwired into us. And so when it comes to grief, I do a lot of grief work with clients who are navigating the loss of a loved one. And a lot of times I'll just start the session, and they will just spend the first half an hour just talk, and unloading because they haven't had a chance to share their story in that way with the other people in their life, perhaps. Or maybe they have shared bits and pieces of it, but like they have to feel like they censor themselves because their friends or family can't really handle the intensity of their emotion. And so, yeah, just being able to share the story of their loved one, share the story of how the death happened, whether it was good, bad, traumatic, ugly, beautiful, all the things, to be able to share the memories of their loved one, like the good stuff, like the happy parts. Like I've had clients who just want to talk about the memories of their child. Like it's just wholesome and beautiful. And I think once even I had a session where I said, hey, you mentioned you wanted to work on specifically XYZ related to grief. I just want to know that I'm able to support you in that. So is there anything you'd like me to talk about or share education on or like witness or hold? And they're like, no, just being able to talk to you and share the stories and talk about this person with you has been all that I've really needed. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Oh, I love this, Nikki. And it occurs to me, one thing, I've been very transparent with people for the past month or two. I have experienced too many deaths in the last like few months. So um, having been in and I'm still in grief myself, I think this is why I was so interested in talking to you about storytelling, because I find myself sometimes it's just like needing also to tell the same stories. And somebody just recently said to me, you're metabolizing the the story, you're metabolizing the death, you're metabolizing the loss, you're processing it through your body. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had clients who do that as well, the same story over and over again.
Ah,
Sometimes they'll have not pleasant instances where they've told the story a lot to their friends and family and they get like shot down for that, which like I
ah,
get it, but also come on. Um, Again, like I said, I'm going to go back to the humans are storytelling creatures thing. I'm like writing a book right now, and it's a personal story. And in the process of writing this book, I've had to really metabolize is a great word. I've had to really sink into the details of it and relive it and
yes.
integrate it in a way that I didn't before I sat down to write it and really think about like the details of it. So yeah, it resonates a lot.
Yeah. I wish I remembered who told me it, because I've thought of that. I've used that word a lot ever since, because it feels to me grief is so physical,
Mm.
and the storytelling, because it's verbal, maybe because we feel the vibrations in us when we're speaking. There is something about it that to me is also very different than journaling, for instance, by myself. There's also this need to have a witness.
Yeah, and, like, half the time when you're in grief, I'm not gonna speak to your experience, but, like, I've talked to people who I'm like, "Oh, I'm a writer," and so I'm thinking, like, I'll have them do some writing prompts or read a book, and they're like, "Absolutely not. That's not something like, we don't really feel like engaging in the cerebral right now, that's too much work. It's
Yes.
exhausting, it's heavy, I'd rather just talk." And to your point about witnessing, like, they don't want just talking to a tape recorder, right? They wanna talk to a human being, not an AI bot, by the way, a human being who hears
Yes.
them and honors it. And even if we don't have anything to say of like the right words, just kind of being like, wow, I'm so sorry. And thank you for sharing about that person. Like, that's enough.
I love that, Nikki. Thank you for actually also doing that, like what you just did about saying it's not the words, right? Like by simply the presence, right? Just being present, nodding your head like you're doing now. It's like and really um making sure that the person who's sharing the story that they feel heard. I think that really, and I know for a lot of people that it's really a little nerve wracking. Like we have a friend who's in grief and we know we want to reach out, but we're worried about it. And so I think that the tips that you're giving, like to show up and to not worry about what you say, right? Do you have any other tips that maybe like for people who, they either they themselves are in grief and they want to share it, or the other side?
Yeah. Like, just so if I'm speaking to someone who's looking to talk to a friend who just had a grief, something like, hey, just checking in. I know XYZ just happened, or who knows, maybe it happened like months ago. Just
Right.
checking in about this specific topic, your person, say their name. That's always a good one to say the person's name. They
Yes.
always want to remember that they're still around in
Yes.
memory and spirit and heart. Um, I'm here if you want to talk. Or also a really good time is like anniversaries or special dates. Like if it's that person's birthday, if it's a holiday, especially right now, it's holiday time, and that's also
Yes.
been really hard. So hey, the holidays, like checking in on you. I know it's coming up on that time of year. It can be kind of heavy. How are you doing? Especially in the wake of such and such's death, things like that.
I love that, Nikki. And I love, it's like say their names, I would say the name. I also put in my calendar, when someone dies, I do put that date. So I know, and if I do know their birthday as well, as special times to remember to check in. But the other thing that has really been such a learning for me, I've had friends who check in every day. And I have never known to do that myself. Like that never occurred to me. But they'll just say, like, the simplest of, like, you're on my mind. I know this is really hard right now. Want to talk? Or, it's the simplest, they just say the simplest, but it's like, I'm here. My phone's on, call me anytime, day or night. Like this, but that consistent, I mean, that is if you have the bandwidth, if you have the
Sure,
bandwidth.
yeah.
Right. Not everyone does. And that kind of leads me, I think let's weave this in, because one of the things you taught me when we were talking last time was an expression called trauma dumping. And I feel like this might weave in right now to that. Do you want to tell us what that is? And
Yeah. So I think trauma dumping is something of the younger generations. So either me or the generation below me.
yeah,
I've heard it a couple of times. It's not like, I don't know how super ubiquitous it is. I've seen it on social media. I've had people say it to me, or I've heard instances of people who have like a story they're trying to share and their friend has said, "Oh, don't trauma dump on me." And so the context of it would be like, "Don't trauma dump on me. You should go talk to a therapist. Like, do you need help?" And like, there are situations where, to your point, that's warranted because maybe someone doesn't have the capacity to handle a person asking for support via text like every single day.
right.
So in that case, like maybe that would be something to consider. But like I think people are using it a little bit casually, or they can be, or it can be weaponized. And it can be like a way to bypass through therapy, through professional help, which I'm not crapping on by any means, but a
Right.
way to bypass the very human need to be seen and heard and just to talk to a human being about whatever's going on with you.
Yeah, and I really want to underscore, like wow, it almost takes my breath away when I imagine saying to somebody, starting to talk to them and then having someone say, please don't trauma dump, maybe you need a therapist, which sounds really harsh. I mean, of course, I got a therapist right away, during this time, and a lot of people do. And yet, back to what we were saying just a few minutes ago, what we're really asking people is not for therapy. We're asking for company, really, and just tell our story, right? And I mean, am I missing something? Is there anything else? Company and storytelling.
No, I think you're spot on. Literally none of the work that I do in grief is therapeutic. It will be eventually, God willing, because I'm training to be a grief therapist, but that's like years down the line. And so right now I'm strictly non-clinical. So literally all of the work that I do involves listening, mostly listening to the stories, and then like reflecting back, showing that I care. Occasionally there's information, like there's instances where like grief awareness education becomes kind of helpful, of like normalizing, you touched on earlier, like the physical symptoms of grief. And so sometimes my job is like, oh, hey, did you know, by the way, that you feel really crappy and heavy and foggy, and it's not because you're lazy and horrible, it's because you're experiencing grief.
Love that. I love that. Right. So because as a a trained death doula, you do have a lot of resources that you can, ways to support people that the average Joe doesn't have.
Mhm.
And yet I just go back to you actually just used a word too, that reflecting, which was, I think, also a third. Like it is great, like, to simply be there for people and to listen, let them tell their stories. And if we feel comfortable, I've noticed that is a beautiful tool to just gently reflect back. If someone says, you know, oh my gosh, I'm feeling such remorse right now because of da 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 around my mom. To just gently say, like, oh my gosh, I hear you. I hear that remorse. Do you want to say more about it? Or something
Yeah.
like that, gently.
Yeah, you're carrying a lot.
Yeah, that's
So okay, like of course you feel that way. You've got some real heavy things going on. You've got some tragedies unfolding. Like of course you feel, and just like validating that, and you can kind of see in real time their shoulders just
yeah.
drop and their lightness comes back. It doesn't always happen, but I've had occasions where just kind of offering those kind of things, that kind of reflection or just listening, and the person is totally different from the start of session versus the end of session. So yeah.
When you said it just now, I felt that relief. Just to hear someone say, of course you feel that way. Like, no matter what we're feeling, right? Like, I mean, and when we're in grief, there's just like a tumult. I mean, at least that's my experience. It is not a simple thing. And so to just hear someone say, of course, right? Of course, that in itself is so calming. Yeah.
It makes you feel like less of a crazy person amid a storm of like you said, emotions and a tumult of things, and amid a society that kind of makes you feel like a crazy person. Like it's set up to make you feel like you're doing it wrong, or you're grieving too long, or the DSM-5 now says if you grieve for over a year, that's prolonged grief disorder. Like, yeah, it's really hard not to lose your mind.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And I guess, I know this is a little bit off topic, but I think it just dropped in. I'm going to say it. So, very well meaning people, very, very, very well meaning people will often say to me, oh, I hope you're feeling better today, which I know it comes from a very good place, and people do really hope that. And yet, I think if we take a pause and we think about like when there's death or really big loss of any kind, that in some ways that can set that little bit of an expectation that it's like, are you over it yet, please? Because this is really hard for me, you know?
Yeah, there's like probably gentler ways of saying a similar thing. Like you don't necessarily have to. I don't know if I can pull it off the top of my head right now, but like how like my go-to is always a question, right? So like, how are you doing today? And leave it open-ended. Don't try to lead in the direction of like, oh, I hope you're feeling better today. Like, be open for what might come, and what might come is like, no, I feel like crap. I feel like crap today because I'm grieving.
I love that. I love that. Like asking a question rather than, they used to say like leading the witness, right?
Mhm.
And I think also I have one friend, bless her heart, she has gone through grief and so she really understands it. She'll say, how are you in this moment? Which
Mm.
I think is really beautiful because she understands that it's like, well, 2 minutes ago I was on the floor crying. Actually, right now I'm feeling okay, like I'm steady, or but maybe next, you know what I mean? It gives it that, at least for me, and I've heard many people talk about this, it is a moment to moment survival that's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of just being of like, how are you doing in this moment?
Yeah.
And not just trying to imply like, oh, you're gonna feel better in this moment today, tomorrow, whatever it may be, for sure. Or
Right.
being with what is.
Yeah, I love that. When I was at the Endwell conference 2 weeks ago, and I'm sorry I forget his name, but a wonderful speaker talked about the metaphor of grief as a journey
Mm.
and how he felt like that sets people up for this kind of very tidy beginning, middle, and end of this journey, And he was saying that he likes instead to just, grief is a language that we're all learning how to speak. That kind of just opens it up to fewer expectations that it's going to look a certain way. Even, I mean, I know a lot of people who it's 30 years later, it's 40 years later, that grief is still alive. It is. And it wasn't a journey that ended at any point. It's something that, um, as far as I hear and understand, people live with it.
Yeah, I actually just started reading the Grief Recovery Handbook. It's like it was originally published in the late 90s, and I even the title kind of gave me pause, like the grief recovery. And I'm
Oh,
reading because I want to read it and just like expand on my I always read grief books, but I'm reading it a little bit skeptically, just a teeny bit of like one eye open of like, okay, I don't know if I resonate with this title because it implies that you get over it. Maybe that's not what they meant, and I'll find out as I dive
yeah.
deeper. But that gave me a little bit of pause. And like my favorite metaphor that I tend to pull out for clients and just to remember for myself is that it's not something that goes away, but it's something that your life and your capacity increases to fit around. So like
Oh,
if grief is the size of a golf ball or something, but it's in a little jar and it barely fits in that golf ball, that's like the early stages of grief, right? And
right.
then maybe a year later, it's in a different size jar. The grief hasn't changed size, it hasn't changed intent like shape or anything, but the life and the emotional capacity and just the time softens wounds or kind of changes wounds.
Right.
Because people just think that, oh, the grief ball, it goes from this big to this big to this big. But that's not really what happens. It stays constant in size, and then you just kind of grow and unfold around it. And that's how I found that to be very helpful for people.
Oh, Nikki, that's beautiful. I'm really grateful that you brought that in. I think that is a beautiful, um, because you know, even for me, like even in the earliest stages of grief, I could see where the growth was starting to happen, because I mean, for me, one of the biggest things is really like watching how my friends were just these masters at being like, and I was learning so much even as I was grieving. I was also sort of, another part of me was like, wow, you know, I know how to do this differently for people that I love going forward. Huge, huge, beautiful thing to learn, even, as hard as it is.
Yeah, sometimes being in it is the best way to learn. Um, Yeah, like I recently had a thing where a loved one near me almost took their life. And the support that I received from like a select handful of people was very just eye-opening of like, I don't need them to fix it. And I finally understand like exactly how it feels to just have someone sit with me in this as I like sob my head off and not tell me it's gonna be okay or not tell me how to fix it or just not tell me to stop crying. Like, you're good, just cry and be there. And that was so powerful.
Nikki, right. Like, I think, and I know we're kind of heading to our time for here, but I'm so grateful that you brought that in, because that, I think, in our society in general, right? I think we're not really well practiced at simply sitting with hard stuff. And the power, like what you just said, like the power of, I'm here, like, and not have, I think, there's a lot of, especially in the United States, I think I've talked to people about this, it's everywhere, but especially in the United States, there's this wanting to fix things, there's a wanting to right, people want to wrap things up with a bow very quickly, like a Hollywood movie. I think that's partly where we get it. Our shows are like, okay, bum 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 bum, oh, done, everything's good. And so that idea of just like, even if we have that, like, how can I fix it, to let it go and simply just be there with love and presence with someone.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely our culture. And I'd also just go back to just humans are comfort seeking creatures. We want to be
Uh,
happy and safe and not think about negative things that could happen, such as our loved ones dying. And so it's kind of almost like I do sympathize with, as much as I fight
yeah.
on behalf of my grievers, I do sympathize with those who say those not great things or just want to get over it or just want to fix it because like we're human and that's a tendency. We have trouble just sitting in boredom in moments of discomfort, let alone something as hard and painful and traumatic as like intense grief. So I think we just need to practice getting better at sitting with harder stuff.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the compassion you're bringing to it. And I also want to remind people, anyone listening now or later, I mean, we are talking about people grieving, but I think it's a very similar conversation if we're with someone who is at the end of their life, someone who is ill, maybe someone who's in hospice. Some of these things are very similar, right? Where it's like just totally showing up with love, being present. I'm here with you. Whatever we can do to be with all the hard feelings that are naturally going to come up for us, but to remember that we are really, I think this is just me, I think we're in service at that moment.
Yeah, for sure. I know when I was in hospice volunteering, one of the most powerful sessions I would have is just I'd come in and sit with a client who was nonverbal because they were actively dying. And I would just sit there and I would like say my name and stuff. And I'd say, like, hi, I'm here to sit with you. And that's it for like the next 45 minutes. I would just hang out.
I
And I don't know if that helped, but I'd like to think that just a human being in the room was something nice.
I can't imagine that I mean, in my mind, like that again, it's a loving presence. It's just having a loving presence that has always made a difference for me. Yeah, people don't have to say anything. So I have really gotten so much out of talking to you. I love all the different wisdom that you've brought in today. Is there anything before we go? Any last, like something that feels like you wanted to say it that didn't get said?
No, just reiterating that we're all humans, just trying to be our best and do our best to be there for each other, even when things hit the fan. Have compassion for, again, self and also whoever's going through the grief. Try to let them speak about their experience in whatever ways you feel capable of. And if you can push that a little bit so that we're not just telling everybody to stop trauma dumping, that would be, I think the world would be a little bit of a better place. Yeah.
And I love that. And it's very simple, like the things that you've shared today, right? It's like it actually makes it easier for us to be with people. I hope. I mean, to me, that's how it feels. Like there's not all of these things we have to remember. We just need to show up with love and yeah, and
Yeah.
listen. Niki, thank you so much. I'm hoping that we'll have a chance to talk again. I know you do some beautiful legacy work with people, and we didn't have time today, but let's come back and talk about that another time.
Oh, yes. That sounds awesome. I love
I
that.
really love
Thanks
that.
so much, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, anyone listening now or later. So glad that you're here. And stay tuned for another conversation with Niki next time. Okay. Bye, everyone.